the real, raw, honest conversations about parenting teenagers in today's world. No filters, no sugarcoating, just truth, compassion, and practical insight from experts, educators, and parents who are right in the trenches alongside you. This podcast is where parents come to hear the conversations they didn't even know they needed. My mission is simple: to help you feel supported, informed, and empowered so you can build a connection with your teen that you truly want. If you want to go deeper into this work with me, stay until the end, and I will share how you can connect with me. From my heart to yours, thank you for being here, for doing the hard work of parenting, and for choosing to grow right alongside your teen. Welcome to another episode of Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for Today's World, the podcast where we have the real and the raw and the honest conversations about what it takes to raise teenagers and where we get the answers to the questions you didn't even know you needed to ask. So today we are part 2. So we're doing the sequel. If you missed last week, it's going to be part 1 with Lisa Richer, and we just had way too much to say. And we are continuing. You can listen to it in any order, but I really suggest you get a good feel for her from the last episode, because you're just going to not want to stop listening to what she has to say. Lisa, welcome back to the show, part 2. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I was so excited when I saw this on the calendar. I'm like, yay, I get to talk to Cheryl again, because we had so much to talk about last time. So I'm happy to be back.
So much in common, honestly. And, it's so easy to talk to somebody who has the same mission sitting across the screen. Like, we just want to help families. We just want to give them a voice. And it's just so easy to just keep talking. So first, just give us a refresher. You'll hear the entire bio in part 1. But Lisa, give us a refresher: who you are, what are you doing, and what is the point?
Yeah. And it's interesting. So those that will listen to the first one, and then this, I've really narrowed it down a little bit, but it almost has gotten more complex, but in a simple form. And people understand that more about me and you when we start chatting. But I'm a neurodivergent success partner and an advocate. I'm transforming stuck into success for students, athletes, parents, and professionals, and not just parents, but families in general. And I'm the creator of Clarity, Confidence, Courage Journey Map. I bring the how and the what to partner with my clients' why. And together we navigate the internal, relational, and systemic roadblocks so that the individual, the family unit, the organization, the athlete, whatever that is, can thrive.
I love it. I just love it. And we had talked a lot in our first episode about advocating with our kids and what it means to have a diagnosis. And so today, and we touched on this last week, and that this is a whole show, because there's a really emotional component to a diagnosis, and that is medication. Mm-hmm. And, I talk to parents all the time about it. No, we never. They get to a stage where there's no, we never will. There's no way. It'll turn them into somebody else. It won't, allow them to be who they are. We're not resorting to big pharma. Like, there's so many different reasons why parents avoid, are afraid of, don't believe in, and there's no judgment on this end from any of that. Mm-hmm. But I also understand personally what it can do and what it can mean. And when I think parents only have one side of the equation, they might be missing out on the value of yes or no, making that decision with all the information. So talk to us about, and I really want to just say this. So I am diagnosed ADHD. 28 years working with kids who have ADHD. I called in the diagnosis a million years ago. However, my role in the school was crisis management. So go, Kevlar, walkie-talkie, putting out fires all day long. Did I need medication? No. Mm-hmm. Because what I was doing was completely complementary to having ADHD.
Mhm.
Fast forward, COVID hits. My kids are not requiring crisis management because they're not even going to sit on a computer screen with me. So now I'm entering data, I'm writing reports, I'm sitting in Zoom meetings where I feel like I'm going to throw up because that's when I needed it. So that's when I actually went to a psychiatrist, got formally diagnosed so that I could have, which I'm going to tell you took 20 minutes. Sitting with a psychiatrist, they're like, yeah, here, who do I make the script out to? And in that time, the medication saved me. I'm not going to say saved my life, but it saved me. And so I have to say that there were times where I would need to sit on a Zoom for an hour and I literally felt like I was going to throw up. Like physically, viscerally felt sick to my stomach, knowing I was going to have to sit still, listen, have a response, participate. And when I started the medication, it changed it for me. So talk to me. Why are we talking about this, and why do you think this is important?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I'm sitting here with a pen, flicking it, taking notes so I don't interrupt you, playing with my hair, looking around, hair up, hair down. Those are ways that I fidget without, getting up. But those are ways that I try to keep myself right in space. I am very late diagnosed ADHD. I grew up as an elite level gymnast, so spent 17 years in the gym, spinning and flipping and doing things. In school, always lost in translation, always on blabbermouth, right? Like you talk too much or too this or too that, you're moving too much, all those things. And so when I think about medication and when I think about my own children, because I have two very different neurodivergent boys. My oldest, we never put him on medication. And we never put him on medication because it wasn't what was appropriate for him. But what's really interesting, Cheryl, and as I was listening to you, and we might have talked about this last time, there were so many times where people would not want to get the tools and resources to help their kids. They wanted to just go to the medication. So there's that side. We had decided with my oldest, we're not going to do medication unless we absolutely have to. And so for him, having a diagnosis of autism, in addition to other diagnoses, we started doing behavioral interventions, social skills, speech, OT, and all of those interventions. I'm a huge proponent that a diagnosis informs, it doesn't define.
Yes.
It is not the end, it is the beginning.
Yeah.
And so for him, he never went on medication. And what's also really interesting is when he was diagnosed almost 16 years ago now, I was told that he did, in fact, have ADD or ADHD because when you're diagnosed autistic, it comes along with the ride.
Yeah.
But if you are diagnosed ADD or ADHD, because they were separate, then it doesn't automatically mean you're autistic. So the whole ADHD thing is a whole nother thing I don't usually get into, but my understanding was that one diagnosis came with a PAL, no matter what, like the other one didn't, but one did.
Yeah.
So maybe some people thought he needed the medicine. So then there were some kiddos whose parents automatically medicated them just so that they could sit still, like you were saying, but never were willing to go out and do those interventions. And for me, it's all about in collaboration, in connection. So my younger son comes along. He has many neurodifferences himself. ADHD and anxiety are two of them, which initially we thought were like the headers, but really they're not the headers. They were the ones that were most out there, right? Lots of learning differences that he has as well. But for him, we actually had him go on ADHD medication because the psychiatrist said, yes, he has anxiety, but we have to do the ADHD medication because that's what's going to help him. But here's the thing. Because I didn't know what I didn't know. I just listened to that.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward a year and a half, he gets diagnosed with absence seizures. 2 weeks before he gets diagnosed, we're sitting in a CHAD session with a neurologist who's talking about ADHD and says, if your child also has anxiety, which a lot of times comes with it, but if it's really prominent, you have to treat the anxiety before you can treat the ADHD. And my husband and I looked at each other like, huh. So we go to the neurologist, and the neurologist says, he's not on anxiety meds? No. Okay, well, his anxiety is triggering these seizures. So here we go, right? Again, connectedness. If you don't want him on more than 2 medications, because we were also talking about like medication management, he's only 9.5, like how many things can he be on? Get him off the ADHD meds and put him on the anxiety. Because if you don't treat the anxiety and get him to a place where he's open to learning, open to gaining the tools,
yes,
the ADHD medication doesn't matter. It's just masking. And so this is where, for me, it's not an either or.
Mm-hmm.
It's a when then.
Yeah.
And it's get those questions answered, be curious, ask, and then figure it out. Because my older son never went on medicine, and he's doing great. This other parent that I was talking about that put their child on medication right away always tapped into our resources. Anytime we had play dates or social programs, they always wanted to be a part of it. But when their child got to be a teenager like mine, they didn't have any of the tools. So when the child decided I want off the medication, they didn't know how to work through it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know what worked for their brain and what didn't. And so, but mine did. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. It was the choices that were made.
Yeah.
But when you give your child the choices, when you are armed with the knowledge and you meet with people like you and I, and we have these conversations and we connect them to other people. We were talking about this earlier, right? Like maybe there's a psychologist they need to work with, or a speech and language pathologist, or, you know, just a different interventionist.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing them in connection with, what works for one person doesn't work for another. So that's the other piece of this. I feel like trusting your gut, especially as a parent, and recognizing that just because it worked for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for your child or for you. Don't make those decisions in a funnel. Make those decisions with the information that truly paints the full picture of your child's unique circumstances in mind.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like some parents automatically go to no because they feel like they have failed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk to that? Because I talk to that till like blue in the face individually with parents, but can you speak to it about how that we need to shift that paradigm of thought about, oh my gosh, I can't help them, so I have to medicate my kid.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just trying to think about this. When I first started doing this work as a business, I had brought with it my years of parenting, but all of my years of being undiagnosed neurodivergent as well. And then 4 years in, I was diagnosed. But what I have come to understand is that it all is coming from a place of fear. Mm-hmm. So when we're medicating immediately, or not medicating immediately, it's a fear-based reaction. Mm-hmm. When we are informed and we're showing up with curiosity and instead of and letting go of the own judgment and shame that we have within ourselves, and then working with others to help us figure out what's true and right for this circumstance. And so there's so many times, like I see this more with dads and moms, where they blame themselves for the reason the kid isn't doing something, or I have failed them. And sometimes the medicine is to make it easier on the adult. The medicine's not there to really help the kid. The medicine's to make life easier on the adult. And that's not a good reason either. And so we have to let go of our misconceptions and our selfish reasons for doing these things and figure out what is right for the child. And it is not an easy thing to do. And I will say, I've been on the other end of this spectrum where I have enabled and coddled my kids in some ways growing up. I've learned and through lots of therapy after hitting burnout and my own trauma-informed things that were making me act and react certain ways, or the things I wish my younger self had that I didn't get, but recognizing that's not necessarily what my kid needs. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not. And there's always things that we're learning. What I am is empathetic. I'm a big reflector. And I've learned from these things and I listen. And yes, it might hurt. Like it might be that arrow and that dagger that hits for a minute, but then where is that coming from? Is it because that person meant it offensively, or is it hitting me because of how I interpreted it from a past experience? Or is this my shame or my judgment or my fear coming up? And without being able to break those things apart, and I'm not a therapist. So when I work with parents, when I work with organizations, when I work with schools, like whoever I'm working with, and even in our conversation, Cheryl, before we came on, we know, you and I, that we can't do this alone, and we're never meant to do it alone, but in conjunction with others that know more than we do, because we know what we know. We don't know what we don't know, and we definitely don't know what we don't think we don't know. So I know that sounds weird, but like the unknown unknowns is where those light bulb moments come on. And we can never get there without the conversation. Because what happens is if you do nothing without intervention, or you do the medicine without intervention, and the intertwining thing is the term intervention. If you're not doing the interventions, it doesn't matter which route you choose, you're still not getting what the child needs. So then we're failing the child because we're not looking at the whole child.
Yeah. I feel like when we say interventions, like the medication does what the medication does. The interventions, I feel like, allows our kid to understand who they are and how they work and how to speak up for themselves, because now they're understanding, as opposed to, we're going to do this in a silo. Here's your medication. Yep, things look better. We're good to go. And I feel like you're right. Like it doesn't, that provides us with temporary relief, but without a consistent area of growth for our kids. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And there's a place, I think it's still on my site. Like my old business card used to say, every child deserves to live their best life. And I don't have business cards after COVID. I was like, but it does make sense. And what I was writing down as you were talking is that statement again. So every person, honestly, like I've expanded it to every person, deserves to live their best life. And they deserve to have access to the tools and resources that help them get there. And that's the other piece of it. I know that's on my site somewhere. So people like you and I provide those tools and resources, because we're not that resource for all of those things, but we're a connector and a conduit.
Yeah.
And when a parent, a family member, a coach, a professional, a teacher, whoever it is, chooses not to get curious about what am I missing, what is not working, and thinking about the antecedent of a behavior. And I'm not talking ABA therapy right now. I'm just talking about in general. What is the antecedent that creates the behavior that results in that consequence? Those ABCs can be worked with anywhere. So if you find that your child is not able to sit still, they're not listening, they appear to be defiant, behavior is communication. So instead of just saying, shut up, sit down and do it my way, or let me medicate you so that I feel better, where is that coming from? And that's the hard work, Cheryl. I think that's the other thing that people don't think about is it is physically and mentally and emotionally exhausting to parent a neurodivergent child.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to parent a neurotypical, if you will, in what society deems neurotypical. Throw in that, and then throw in family issues, throw in a parent ends up with getting diagnosed with cancer and going through treatments when the kids are young, and or there's divorce involved, or there's family members that are like, why are you doing all of this? And that doesn't make sense. Or the why, which then triggers your own prior traumas. There's so much there, and I'm just gonna throw it all up out there. It's all out there, and people might go, oh yeah, whatever. But those listening to your podcast, and the fact that I'm grateful to be a guest, not just once, but twice, when we're talking about that redefining parenting of teens, we have to first deprogram how we were parented.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes into my book chapter, which I didn't offer out before, but I'd be happy to share. Is my book chapter in this book I was a part of is Unbecoming to Become, Finding Clarity in the Chaos. And it goes back to go forward. But then I also have a how to create your support team. And yours would probably look very similar to mine with that one. And so certainly if you want your guests to see what I have out there, I'm happy to share it. I just think that when we look at who you and I are as people and our experiences that led us here to this intersectionality of so much similarness in terms of our missions, that book chapter may be more powerful in helping in this case, whether it's male or female, doesn't matter, it's for anybody, than that list, because it's not the list, it's how we implement and execute upon that list that really matters in the case of the audience that we're talking to here.
Mm-hmm. And it goes totally in alignment with what I say in pretty much every episode. It's not them, it's you. But that's where the magic happens, because now we have control to tap back in and say, let's even talk about medication. Why am I so triggered about medicating my kid? Why am I so triggered about taking, maybe I have a history of my family that the doctor is a pill pusher and all he does is write scripts, and that's not happening. And all it takes is some focus and some dedication and some discipline. That's all it takes. Oh my gosh. And so turn it in if you're getting triggered about something like this. And I love to say this sounds so basic, but if your kid had diabetes, would you say, listen, we don't need insulin, we're good, we're just going to watch what we eat? Or if your kid is sight impaired, we're going to say, you don't really need glasses. You just need to work harder at focusing on the work. I mean, and it feels so basic, and people might be saying, oh, that's ridiculous. There's no comparison. Yes, there freaking is. Yes, it's 100% comparison. And if we stop looking at the medication for ADHD and autism as something very different than something that's absolutely necessary in some kids, it is the fuel that runs the car. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about this, because I feel like, parents.
Well, it's funny that you say fuel that runs the car, because, and I'm just writing this down so I don't forget. I have a blog that I did a long time ago. And everyone keeps telling me I should start doing it again. I was blogging when blogging wasn't cool with Blogger. And I think Blogger kind of has made a comeback a little bit, but my blog site was Blogger. It was that old fashioned, can't even get it on the app on my phone anymore. That's how old it is. Mm-hmm. My oldest, who's going to be 20, I think was 2 when I started doing it. And one of the articles, or one of the blog posts that I did was, under the hood, your child's diagnosis is figuring out what's under the hood of the car. Mm. So you hear the clank, you hear the rumble, you hear the whatever that is, there's something off, but you don't know where it's coming from. And you can keep saying, okay, it's the radiator, Maybe it's the gas. I mean, when we were younger, it was like if you didn't put a certain type of gas, it like clunked. Like, so the Gulf gas stations like made it like
Such
or something.
bullshit.
Right?
Yes.
Remember that though? Yeah, because we're around the same age. So it's like, this makes this clink, and it sounds like there's rocks in it, or whatever the case is. When you think about kids in cars, think about a kid and you think about a car. So you have the inner workings of the car, but what's under the hood, you don't know unless sometimes the mechanic literally takes everything out in pieces and diagnoses it one by one. So when you think about the whole child, if you are treating a symptom instead of the source, you're not getting to the root of it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say like it's a belt on the car. If you think that someone's like, oh no, it just needs like an oil change or just needs something else, and no one looks at that fraying band in the car, that belt, and then all of a sudden one day the belt rips in half, well, guess what? Now the car's done. And now you're in much worse shape than you were if you would have just spent the $200 to get the full diagnosis. And so it's just like with everything in life, sometimes we as humans just want the quick shortcut and just to make it go away. But until you figure out what is that fuel that truly ignites the best in your child, and which of the types of fuel, if we're going like with the car thing, actually make your child run less efficient and less effective, we never get there. And so it's interesting. So I want to go one moment to kind of that building your support team. I talk about like with a support team, you're talking about like the pediatrician, you're talking about perhaps a special education advocate or consultant like we are. Talk about the speech and language pathologist, the OT, sometimes an ABA therapist, sometimes an executive functioning coach. You can bring in the school team, you can bring in tutors, reading interventionists. Recently, I was just on a podcast last week, and there was a dog trainer. And she said, have you ever thought about bringing a dog trainer into? And I was like, not until just now.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. She was a special educator. She is someone that did foster kids, and she does dog training. But it's like just as much about the person as a dog, right? You think of Cesar Millan, you think of like, wow, when you're calm and regulated, look what happens. And it was just wild to me because I never would have thought to put that as a support team member on my list of who you might want to use. But now that's in my repertoire because I chose to lean in and understand the impact that not only she has on the dogs, but on the kid and potentially the whole family. And so the example that she used, stay with me here, was when the dog left the room, the child would have a meltdown. Not a temper tantrum now because it's a meltdown because it's sensory dysregulation. That dog was keeping her so calm that when she left the room, she'd have the words to share, right? Behaviors, communication, that the dog's regulation left her feeling dysregulated. So now how do we work with that child? Do you bring the ABA therapist in? Do you bring an OT in? Do you bring a speech and language pathologist in? Like who comes in to help bridge that gap and connect those dots? But that's where the role that I play as a neurodivergent success partner, and sometimes I will say advocate because that's what people look for, but really in that role as that conduit between all these different interventionists that actually bring together the full view of what's going on. The neuropsychologist, the neuroacademic. We thought for years that ADHD and anxiety was what was really fueling the fire for my younger son. We had him reassessed last September and October, and come to find out that he has 8 different neurodifferences, 5 of which are in the specific learning disability space. So he doesn't have dyslexia, but we think it's only because he had so much early intervention with a really great reading program and the prefix, suffix words in the private school he went to, that he was able to learn how to work with that. And we figured out that his age grouping, they had let go of phonics in our county. So all these kids didn't have didn't have it. So you think about the kids that didn't get it in general, and you think about the kids that have dyslexia or dysgraphia, dyspraxia, those things. So he did get diagnosed with all the other Ds: dyspraxia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, expressive language disorder, which no one had diagnosed before. And so where I'm going with this is we were treating the ADHD, we were treating the anxiety, mindfulness, yoga, meditation. The school was amazing. The private school that he's been at for 5 years, with helping get grounded, gain the tools. For him, remember, we talked about this a little bit ago, we needed the anxiety medication. Yeah. Because of the tools and the environment, he was able to take himself off. He's a teenager now, going to be 16 in about a week and a half, off the anxiety medication, because he felt like he had enough tools. Then the environment was appropriate to help him be able to move around and do those things. But what we didn't know at the time, we knew the math thing was going on. I had that going on too, and I kind of always knew, I just didn't know what to call it. But with the other learning differences, especially the expressive language, just how much that at the center impacted his ability to focus, impacted his self-confidence, impacted his ability to calm down, impacted his anxiety. I had no idea until I sat in a meeting with a team of special educators, again, with a reading interventionist, a speech and language pathologist, which we had let go of for years because we were in a private school that wasn't special education based, but it was great for him as he needed it. But coming together with this full team and the neuroacademic assessments that the psychologist had done, I had a light bulb moment, and he's going into 11th grade now. Like, wow, we really were never focusing on what was most impacting him. We will now for the next 2 years. But here's why I bring this up. Instead of blaming myself and saying I failed, I did have that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, what if we would have done this to him? But then I remembered, we can't treat all of it at one time. So if he hadn't gotten the mindfulness, if he hadn't learned how to do the meditation, if he didn't know the yoga, he never would have been able to sit within his body and regulate it. And then be okay, not being okay in some of these environments. Okay, so I shifted it from failure to there's the success point. Now, what's the next step in the phase of a success point for him to become his best self? What additional tools and resources now do we need to give him in order to be able to reach his next level goals?
Yeah. So important. And I love the whole picture, because if we say, okay, we're just going to go down the medication path and that's it. And then, there's different medications. The first one might not work. Yes, there's a cocktail. Yes, there's a dosage, but that didn't work. And now we're back to square one. Whereas if we have a team, if we have a collaborative approach with all different aspects, then if the medication starts to go a little sideways, you still have other avenues to say, oh, well, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Maybe it's the medication, and you're not starting from zero. And I want to respect their time. But I also want to say, and we talked about this last time, listen, when you have your kid, this is an extension of it, diagnosed, you're not labeling them. You are just finding out how to understand them and how to help them understand themselves and how to help the world understand them. And I feel like the medication, if we are, it kind of goes hand in hand. If we do not have our kids diagnosed when it's appropriate, when you have all the data from the school and you have all the data from home and you know something is not right, if we don't have them diagnosed, they will diagnose themselves. And they will diagnose themselves so much worse than what is written on an assessment. They will be incapable. They will be bad. They will be incompetent. They will diagnose themselves so much worse. And in turn, it can also lead to self-medication. And I have seen things go very, very, very sideways, particularly with a teenage boy brain who decides to self-medicate and they have ADHD.
So I wrote a couple of things down with the self-diagnosis. And sometimes the negative impact of not having an appropriate diagnosis, of not having the appropriate tools and supports in place, are not known for many, many, many years. That impact, just because you don't see it, doesn't mean it's not slowly eating away. And so a couple of things I had written down here was, they might self-medicate, like you said. We don't know. The anxiety could kick in. They start masking. The self-esteem goes to shit, goes to hell in a handbasket. The people-pleasing begins, or the shutdown, or the explosion. And then, even as a young adult, those behaviors are communication, and more times than not, they're screaming for help.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, now they're just a problem because we didn't do what we needed to do early on to appropriately support. And when I think about the work that I do, and we talk about the clarity, confidence, and courage journey map, and the clarity aligns to internal, the confidence aligns to relational, and the courage aligns to systemic. When we look at those things, and I think of the role that I play as a neurodivergent success partner advocate, is I'm that conduit between all of those supports and resources. I'm not going to diagnose. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. I'm not a therapist either, but I am someone that objectively can listen to all the parts. Who are we missing? What do we have? And create that journey map that works for you and your family, your children, your organization, yourself, so that you can then make informed decisions to move forward, whether it's in school, in life, in home, whatever that case is. And, and sometimes, I'm in the States, you're in Canada. And so I can help somebody to a certain extent, but somebody might need someone in person, or someone might need people to talk with in your country, and I don't have access to those. And so more times than not, I'll say, okay, you know what? I have a person that I know. So I'm always, having connections, and I love the connection we have, Cheryl, but it's not about me against you or us against them. And the only way to get there is also to not blame yourself and to not think you failed because you're asking for help, because vulnerability is strength, and it is okay to not be okay. And the biggest piece of guidance I wish my younger self realized that I would give them now, and I give to everyone else, is it is not a sign of weakness to ask for help. It is actually a sign of strength.
Oh my God, you're in the game. If you are listening to these podcasts, if you're, reading the books, you're asking the questions, listen, parenting neurodivergent kids. Oh my God. We just said the hardest job on the face of the planet. But if you're listening to the podcast, you're asking the questions, you're reading the book, you are in the game. So no shame, like absolutely. And that's why we do what we do, because we get to see, I think sometimes parents just, they have unintentionally, there's like horse blinders, and they're like, these are my only options. These are my only options. And there's so many more options that advocates and other teams can offer you that have seen work and different, I've been in the education system forever. So do I know how the ministry works? Yes, I do. Do I know the teachers run out of time and feel like they can't have the capacity to help? Yep, I've heard that story before too. So, it's just, don't bury your head. Just keep asking the questions and keep listening to the podcasters. Oh my God. And if you think about it, if your kid desperately needed some help, don't you want them to be watching you ask for help so that they can ask for help? I mean, it's all connected, right? All connected.
Absolutely. Modeling is such an important thing.
I know we have to wrap this up. Again, I feel like we could talk for another 5 episodes. Anyway, Lisa, is there anything I didn't ask that you really wanted to share before we wrap this up?
I just want to come back to one, thank you for the opportunity to engage again. I know this isn't the end, so maybe we'll do another one. But parents, family members, individuals, parenting teens in whatever way, you don't know what you don't know. And instead of coming from a place of fear and judgment and shame, come from a place of curiosity, connectedness, and seeking to understand, because there are many people out there like Cheryl and I that really are here to help you help yourselves, help your family members, your teens be successful, whatever that looks like for them.
Yeah. Great way to wrap up. Great way to wrap up. Thank you again, Lisa. This has been, again, an honor and a pleasure. It's just so nice to sit across from the screen for somebody who we have the same thing in common. And I love that. And I love that you're listening to Parenting Teens Advice Redefined. I appreciate that you spend the time with us. There is always help out there. Connect with me, connect with Lisa. Everything is in the show notes that you need. No question is not a question that needs to be asked. So please reach out. We are so happy to help. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time. Before you go, I really want you to know something. I'm not just a podcaster. I'm a speaker, a published author, and the founder of Insight to Impact. I'm an educational strategist and family advocate with over 25 years of experience helping families and schools support teenagers from diagnosis to IEPs, to interpreting assessments, to high school transitions, and beyond. This podcast, Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for Today's World, is part of my mission to help parents understand schools, support their teens, and feel heard and seen at the table. If today's episode helped you, please subscribe or follow the show, share it with another parent, and leave a review. It truly helps families find the support. And I'm very grateful when you do these things. And if your teen is struggling in school, navigating a new diagnosis, or you need help preparing support at school, you can work with me directly through educational consulting or my 90-day advocacy program. Just visit CherylPankhurst.com to learn more and to book a complimentary consultation to see if I can help. I know parenting is frickin' hard, but if you're listening to podcasts, if you're reading the books, if you're looking for answers, you are not failing because you're still trying. You do not have to figure this out alone. I got you, and we'll see you next week.